Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another update video for EVE Echoes. Today we are looking at the Yan Jung and what their addition means to New Eden. Now, of course, before we jump in on this one, if you do enjoy the video, let me know by hitting like on it, consider subscribing to the channel for all things mobile gaming, especially more content for EVE Echoes, and let me know what topics you'd like to see me cover in future videos, either by commenting down below, or by coming and finding me either on the social media channels shown along the bottom of the screen now, or by joining the Catskull Cartel Discord. Details are all along the bottom of the screen and in the description below. Right, I hope I said that fast enough for those of you who still complain that I have to do a little bit of advertising at the beginning of my videos. Anyway, so, the Yan Jung. The Yan Jung actually are a race that has existed in the EVE lore for quite a stretch of time now. Sovereign RPG can explain this much better than I can, so if you're interested in the lore, do head over to his channel and have a look at what's going on there. Ultimately, the Yan Jung, I believe, were the first people through the portal into New Eden when it originally opened 15,000 years ago. Since then, however, they have kind of disappeared from the face of the universe. They've not been seen much, if at all, and ultimately they've not really played much of a part. Now, we know from the developer stream on Sunday that the Yan Jung are making a comeback for EVE Echoes when it launches, but the nature of this comeback has been a little bit back and forth, and we now have confirmation from the devs that they are a new faction, not a new empire. Now, that's a little bit of a confusing statement for some people if you're not familiar with EVE, so to explain, empires are the four main races, the Minmatar, the Amarr, the Caldari, and the Gallente. When you start up EVE Echoes or EVE Online for the first time, you are asked to create your character, and you will pick one of those races. Now, ultimately, all this does is changes where you start your adventures in New Eden, which ships you immediately have access to, and I think a couple of the basic skills are sort of pre-trained depending on your particular faction of choice. Beyond that, though, obviously, as you move through New Eden, you may have started as Caldari and decided that actually you want to join the Amarr Empire. God help your soul if you do, just because you decide that you like laser cannons, that kind of thing. Of course, you can train into new skills completely. Ultimately, your race doesn't really alter much in the long term, other than your appearance, and even then, there's not really that much going on. A faction, on the other hand, there are several factions in EVE, I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. Those are things like the Angel Cartel, the Sisters of Eve, Sanchez Nation, Mordu's Legion, the Gurustus Pirates, that kind of thing. These are, they're not player races, in fact they tend to be made up of the other races. For example, the Gurustus tend to be ex-Caldari, whereas things like the Angel Cartel tend to primarily be made up of Minmatar pilots, that kind of thing. They're not playable per se, and they're nothing overly unique in amongst themselves, but they do have their own unique technology. So if you're playing, like, say, as an Amarr character and you decide, oh, actually, these Sancha guys that I'm shooting down have some really cool ships, you can eventually find the blueprints to build your own succubus, and indeed some of the parts for it as well. Or, like, I had an Angel Cartel Dramiel during the beta and a Gurustus Pirates Worm. Those are both faction ships. You go to those faction areas, you can buy the blueprints and you can make them yourselves, and there are faction parts as well, like special warp drives or warp disruptors and things like that, that are, again, earned through, like, getting blueprints from those particular factions. Now, this is a key point in the difference between the two. It means you don't choose to start as Yan Jung. You will still choose to start as Caldari, Gallente, Amarr, or Minmatar, but as the game proceeds, you will eventually encounter the Yan Jung in New Eden. You will eventually get the opportunity to get their blueprints and try building their ships and technology yourself. Now, this is a bit disappointing for some people I know who are looking forward to a whole new race to play as, but personally, I actually see this as a good thing and more fitting. Ultimately, why? Well, this fits the lore for a long-forgotten, long-thought extinct race. Small numbers, we're helping them rebuild their technology through us finding the blueprints and doing industry, etc. Now, when World of Warcraft launched Mists of Pandaria, this was something I found hilarious at the time. I mentioned this actually on the Echoes Talk stream with Sovereign and Doomsday when they did the developer announcement on Sunday. But essentially, in Mists of Pandaria, the Pandaren are supposed to be this really elusive race. There aren't many of them left. They're sort of, you know, they're There aren't many of them. Same with the Death Knights. There weren't supposed to be that many of them. Death Knights were supposed to be an elite cartel. Pandaren was supposed to be the last remnants of a dying race. But because they're the new exciting thing, they're what everyone rolled on day one of Wrath of the Lich King, which meant that there were Death Knights absolutely everywhere on day one of Mists of Pandaria. There were Pandaren everywhere, and I was a little worried of that being the case here, that, this long-forgotten race, the echoes of this race have been found, and suddenly they're everywhere. You go to Jita, and everyone at Jita is Yan Jung, with one Kaldari guy, a couple of Galente, and maybe a Minmatar pilot sitting in the background, just going, cool, cool. It just doesn't fit the theme of a long-thought-to-be-extinct race of people. So to me, having them as a faction makes much more sense. It means you can do encounters around them. You can make them the focus, almost the quest givers. You're helping them to rebuild their nation and their technology. That's a really cool concept for me, and I really, really like that. Now, it also means that obviously we'll still see the current spread of empires, I imagine. That's, of course, that Kaldari and Amar tend to be the largest, especially with their player base, with Galente and Minmatar a certain distance behind, as far as I remember. I could have my numbers wrong there, but I tend to remember that the Amar Empire is the biggest. Either way, the point I'm making here is that currently known space is not going to have to suddenly be carved up to sort of shoehorn the Yan Jung in with a new starting area and a whole load of space that somehow they've just taken from whoever, or it's deep in nullsec, which makes no sense at all. Heck, how would you like it if you are a Minmatar pilot like myself, and you come and Malden Heath is suddenly Yan Jung territory. It's not as organic as we know Eve to be, and I like the fact that theoretically we could be helping the Yan Jung to grow as an empire, and thus we might organically see space change to reflect the Yan Jung's growth. That's exciting. I'm really happy about that. Now, interestingly, the whole point is that the developers mentioned during the developer stream on the 17th that the Yan Jung being added was a twofold idea. It obviously had to hook into Eve's existing lore, which it does. They're a race that has existed in the EVE Online backstory for a long time, but they were there to give the developers something that more represents them, and of course to entice more Southeastern Asian subcontinent players, which is a huge mobile gaming market, and notably a market that CCP hasn't done particularly well in. It's arguably the same reason we're getting games like Diablo Immortal, just to try and appeal to the Chinese and Southeastern Asian market, places like Malaysia, Singapore. These are humongous mobile gaming markets that just a lot of companies are now tapping into with games like Eve Echoes, and I'm super excited to have those guys in. That's more players, it's a bigger universe. Very, very excited. Now, Sovereign made a very good point during this, and adding a whole new race in order to add an oriental feel to the game kind of misses a lot of the point. There are already several existing Asiatic bloodlines in the game. Taking a look at it like the Kaldari Akura or the Galente Jinmei, these are both Asiatic races straight out of the gate. So I think pretty much every race has at least one bloodline that is sort of Asian descent, whereas those of us living in Africa, the only African tribe I can really see for sort of sub-Saharan Africa is the Brutor tribe, and you make of that what you will, or you've got some of the other tribes based around other bloodlines in the Amar Empire, based around sort of like a more Egyptian theme for Northern Africa. But the point I'm making is that there are Asiatic bloodlines already in the game, so it's not necessary. I wouldn't be against them adding the Yan Jung as an entire race in order to sort of loop in more players. I just think it would have been unnecessary. I think those sort of bloodlines already exist to give you something to tie into, and I'm all for people tying into something, being represented in a game. I'm all for that. I know this bleeds into people who are like, how dare you have a game ask me what my preferred pronouns are. I chose a female character, that means I want to be called her. It doesn't affect your game. Just play a female character and choose her, or a male character and choose him. It's not hard. Who cares if I choose to have a female character who identifies as they, or a female character who identifies as male? It's representation, and that makes people more comfortable, gets more people playing a game. It's a good thing. It's only ever a good thing. I don't see a problem with adding more stuff to get Oriental players, Eastern and Southeast Asian players into the game. I just think it may have been overkill. I mean, certainly the ships alone just look amazing. As I said, the one that they've teased mainly so far in the imagery that we saw, I'm going to put it up on screen now, is this one. We don't know what it is. It's a battleship, I think. but we don't know what it's called. They mentioned it's based on Oriental weaponry. To me, that from a bit of playing like Dynasty Warriors and Neo and stuff, that to me looks like a Ji, which is sort of a anti-cavalry polearm used in sort of a lot of Asian military. I think predominantly Chinese, but I could be wrong there. Ultimately, that to me is already pretty cool. And when you look at the big capital that decloaks, again, you can see sort of a pagoda-esque structure to the back of it. That's really cool, and I'm all for having more of this kind of thing in the game. To me, this is also kind of... If you look at EVE Online, you've got things like the Triglavian invasion and all that kind of thing, which we haven't had confirmed for Echoes yet, I don't think. This, to me, seems to be a nice, unique twist on that for Echoes, that we've got an old race, the Yan Jung, returning to New Eden, and perhaps it could be incumbent on us as the players to decide whether they grow, how well they grow, and exactly where they grow and find their home in New Eden. And that, to me, is super, super exciting. But as usual, that is just my opinion, my thoughts, and my comments. I would love to hear yours, as long as they're politely worded, in the comment section down below, or again, coming and joining us on the Catskull Cartel Discord server. Ugh, I nearly fumbled my own corporation name there. You don't have to be part of our corporation. We've got a couple of guys from OP Force and Sovereign's Nation. I'm not sure what he's called that yet, and I'd like the Sanchez Nation reference there. Sovereign States, I think he's called it, something cool like that. Get on over to my Discord, come join us. There's a load of people chatting from all different functions. You're more than welcome. Come talk EVE Echoes, come talk mobile gaming. Anyway, as I said, folks, that is all from me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below or on Discord. Can't wait to chat with you all. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.